So let's look a little bit further into the other things that were going on in history and to another way to look at the whole thing. Here's another way to look at it. Here's the way I look at it. Light is a profound in-here mystery. All electromagnetic behavior is in here to in here from atoms, from one atom to the other, in here to in here. Collective behavior of atoms. Science encountered a doorway, I believe, into profound depth, which in a sense is supernatural, in a sense is extrasensory, but also those words don't quite fit. If you look in the dictionary of supernaturally, it kind of says everything we can't understand. So, we can push the boundary then. We've been pushing the boundary over time of what we understand. So if you make a major push into the supernatural, you don't get rid of it. You just get closer to the part that is truly unfathomable. So science encountered a doorway into going into profound depth, and it covered that doorway with sensory detached mathematics. And for whatever reason, whether it was subconscious or intentional or whatever, I think it is there to prevent incursion of religious thought. Because if you go into go into the depth of it, then it opens the door to spiritual thinking, and which opens the door to religious thought. So I think that's what happened. So we'll pursue along these lines now. As shown in image 55, people have been knocking on that door, that opening into another dimension, into the supernatural, extrasensory, whatever you want to call it, for nearly 140 years. Starting with flatland, in chronological order, you have flatland, and then in the early 1900s, you actually have the physics work of both Einstein and Minkowski. And then after that, there's still continued with thinking about four-dimensional, a hidden dimension, something beyond just our surface sensory pointing dimensions. There was a Scientific American essay contest in 1909. That's really interesting. There were hundreds of applicants that wrote about the possibility of a fourth dimension. Then there's Hubble's discovery in 1929 that our universe is expanding. Well, this work tends to replace that word expanding. We use it, but it really is more like growth. Every atom in the universe is growing in a way that we can't see, but it drives, that energy of expansion drives everything. Now I'm speaking of my own thoughts. But as far as, Hubble didn't say that, of course. Hubble just observed, not through the Hubble telescope. The Hubble telescope was named after his work, which used other telescopes that were less, that weren't out in space. But he discovered that the universe is expanding. And then Sphereland, you see, is a flatland improvement that is like an expanding sphere. So the flatlanders were just teleported to the surface of a big sphere, which is, effectively flat. And then finally in this sequence, in 2006, the idea, which was still very popular, that our universe might actually be like the surface of a four-dimensional sphere, which nobody can imagine that anyway. But mathematically, that was the analogy, or the one dimension up from Sphereland. And the Nobel Prize work of Mather and Smoot in 2006 showed that can't be true. That for that to be true, light over cosmic distance would have to be curved, and they show through very sophisticated space observations and satellites that it's not true, that light does not curve, it's flat. And so that killed the Sphereland idea. So it seemed to validate space-time as the only answer possible. And so that's kind of where it stands right now. The idea of a fourth physical dimension has been pretty much snuffed out. In this slide 60, I just want to acknowledge another book that was one of the first ones. I read at least a chapter in it. And this is a book that Molly gave to me, and I think Cree sent it to me through Molly or something like that. I may be spelling her name wrong too. Sorry about that. But it's I read that after the soccer ball dream I had in 2011, which sent me down through this book and on down into Sphereland and so forth. The chapter is The Church of the Fourth Dimension. And it's really an engaging fantasy story that uses the same math basis as Flatland and Sphereland. And soon after that, doing some searching, I found out that I became aware that some Christian churches profess belief in a fourth spiritual dimension. Actually, there's quite big Christian churches that profess that, which I haven't really pursued, but I wanted to acknowledge this book along with those others. Okay, I want to stick my head in here and just try to be clear about something. You know, this work just provides a really compelling line of thought. And that line of thought goes through the Sphereland story and is clearly true about a lower dimensional universe like Sphereland. But it doesn't really say it's true of our universe. But it's really a compelling argument. And it's worth telling and worth thinking about. And it is something that is engaging even without the mathematics, as I've kind of mentioned before. You can tell some really great stories based on this line of thought that don't violate any truths and that inspire people to think about it. Give them some comfort too, because of the fact that this work aligns so well with the actual physics experimental data that it's a compelling thing. So what I want to do now in the next slide, the very next slide, is show you what they really should be teaching our kids now. And they shouldn't be teaching them, I'm not saying they should be teaching them what this work says, because that has to be verified and sorted through, and a lot of people need to look at it. This is a very simple little universe like Sphereland is. So they shouldn't be teaching that, because that has to be shaken out. But there is something that they really should be saying to the kids. If you send a crew on high to see the high ones and get a message and come back with it, this is what that message should be, shown in this next image. So in slide 065, this is what surely should be said today of story. They should be taught that we don't yet understand relativistic behavior. On the left, Mother Sense's classical way of thinking about it from the wisdom of the ages is okay normally. It's sufficient for most work that people do. It is true that time and distance are actually joined. But if you look at the right, space-time is not reality. It's the way in physics to work with relativistic behavior. So space-time is the way physics fixed their measurement and prediction problem. But their story is not a sensation and perception story. It isn't about the reality of the behavior. It's about managing or controlling and getting a grip on the behavior for their mission, which is measurement and prediction. So this is what should be told today. And you can see that would give hope then. That doesn't say there's no point thinking about it. That says this is really an interesting thing to think about. And so we now come finally to the question we started with, and that's what do these 6 things have to do with this? I mean, how do they help? Because we've said, a lot about what happened and the nature of the problem. And relativistic behavior isn't really understood. Father Math and Mother Sense are divorced. Mother Sense is dishonored. So what does this bridge, these bridge support elements do? How do they fit into the story? That's next. So as shown in slide 70, this is a reconciliation story, or a redemption story, because Mother Sense and Father Science were divorced. You can see that triangle, which I like. They're trying to pull it together. Well, this is a bridge that supports traveling over to a different story, where Father Science and Mother Sense are reconciled again. They're compatible. And the triangle is brought together, so you have physicality, spirituality, and reality tied together in a unified story or a unified concept. So, that's the nature of this bridge, is to go from that place that we just described to a different place where Mother Sense is restored to her rightful place with Father Science. And both of them have to be modified a little bit for compatibility, but this modification is really understandable and seems natural as well. Image 75 shows the prediction is made by this work. That based on this bridge story applied to Sphereland, the prediction is that eventually there will be an altered perception on the Mother Sense side and altered mathematics on the Father Science side. On the Mother Sense side, there's going to be the idea that we do live in a three-dimensional space as far as location. Things are located with three numbers. Three is three-dimensional in that sense. But the things are deep. So it's a space of deep participants in this evolving growth that is our expansion. And the fourth dimension is that depth. It's not a pointing dimension. It's not somewhere you can go. It's a behavioral dimension. So that perception will be altered, and that's a good perception, that all the material things we see are deep things. And that's where the added dimension is. On the right, there'll be altered mathematics. And that's this mathematics that is formed by this bridge is called relation space. The behavioral dimension inside is joined with the out there pointing dimensions. That's what these key elements enable. And it is true, time and distance are joined. There are two different measures of growth, or of our what's called expansion, which is an evolving, changing universe that in this scenario evolves in the manner of growth from a source, just like a plant grows from a seed. In this, our universe has grown from a source, and it continues to grow, and that growth energy drives everything. In the next session, the final session of this series, we'll go through a brief overview of each one of these 6 elements. I've said this will be, I think, the first thing I teach. So I will be working on materials for this. And I would like to go through the teaching after it's prepared. I would like to teach this, like I said before, to you first, and especially you, Molly. And this teaching will not, I haven't prepared it yet, so I shouldn't say too much. I'm going to try to make it to where it has different levels, where the derivations are included in some written documentation and they can be discussed, but it's not, the course will not drag people through that. So let me do a closing, put my face up there for a closing, and we'll be done with this. Oh, and just one other thing is that in that overview, I will give references to locations in the toy physics book just for fun. Each one of those things is in the book, but they're not in that order and they're not clearly called out. So it would be hard to find them. It'd be very hard for you to find them. So I'm going to find them and show you or tell you where they are. We're not going to go through the material in the book, but I'll at least tell you the pages where those things are located in this overview next week. Okay, that finishes us out with this. I don't like this glare on my glasses. I can see it. And so I keep saying this. I've enjoyed this so much. I hope you're thinking about one thing. I know the color schemes I use are crazy. I just can't settle on any idea, and I use colors that strike me at the time, but they're probably schizophrenic. And I know the slides are too busy sometimes. So, I'd like feedback on all of that. So, and I hope this has expressed, an overview of where I think this is going and how I'm going to get this to the marketplace. I haven't talked about the details of their marketing schemes and all the things that are involved in it and everything, because I really wanted to focus on getting a product ready. And so that's what I've tried to do here, is show you what product we want to get ready and what it's all about. And so maybe we can focus on that, is just get a product ready and explain why it's there and who it's for, and sharpen those things. So thank you, and there's just one more in this series, and then I'm hoping to come up and see you guys sometime after that soon.